Today's episode of Pool Magazine podcast is proudly sponsored by the PSP Deck Expo. The International Pool Spa Patio Expo, co-located with Deck Expo, is where all segments of the industry gather to stay well-informed of the latest trends, market directions, and technology. Come for the 135,000 plus square feet of products, suppliers, and education. And stay longer for networking, special events, and experiences. This year's Expo in Las Vegas will be held from October 22nd through October 24th. To learn more about attending the PSP Deck Expo, visit us on the web at poolspapatio.com.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Pool Magazine Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Trusty, and today I'm chatting with Moses Campos, design consultant for Claffey Pools and winner of the 2024 $1 Million Pool Challenge. It's a pleasure to have you with us today on the show, Moses.
Hey, Joe. Yeah, it's an honor to be part of the podcast.
For the benefit of our listeners and readers, can you maybe give us a brief bio about who you are, what you do in your day-to-day role with Claffey, and how you get started in the industry?
Yeah, I'm a design consultant for Claffey Pools. We work in the DFW area. Design consultant to me is just a progression of what might have at one point just been a sales role. I think our industry, in my time being involved in it, has evolved to where it's less of a salesperson and it's more of a consultant who's going to listen to what the client's looking for, put together a strong concept after maybe an initial consultation meeting. And I get to do the visuals. I get to do the exciting, fun, creative side of it all with the homeowners. And in the end result, we do work towards contracting a project and then helping get documents and plans and all that together. That's the role I play in most all projects. It is changing and evolving still, where sometimes I'm dealing more with interior decorators or I'm dealing with a builder. At times I'm not meeting the homeowner, but I'm meeting someone who represents what they're looking for. And then we get to collaborate in a whole different nature as well. So it's a bit of just understanding, what can be done in the yard or in a space. My role is to help vocalize what's good options and then pick through different scenarios that the homeowner or the client is looking for and then help represent it and show them and then work towards building it.
Sure. Sales design consultant, but if you ask 100 kids in school what they want to do, very seldom does anyone ever raise their hand and say, I want to design swimming pools for a living when I get older.
It's something that most people who are involved either came in through some sort of family involvement or they just fall into it. And I definitely was the type to fall into it. I do have a lot of friends that are in the industry. So when I first was exposed to what the pool industry is, I was going to church with, not exaggerating, like 15 people who worked for different companies, but all at one place. And so I definitely was exposed to seeing whether it's a service technician or someone who was on the retail side. There was just a wide variety of people doing things in the pool industry I got to see. But when I first came into the industry, it was more by accident. I was working for myself, doing design work for an ad agency, for graphic design, web design, video editing. I was doing that type of work. So my schedule was very flexible. And one of those friends that worked for a pool builder had the need for someone to help drive a technician around. The technician's license, like driver's license, expired. So instead of replacing or pausing their employment, I just drove them for 2 weeks. That was the agreement. I was going to drive them for 2 weeks. And they said, hey, you don't have to do anything, just drive. But if you want to help. So I got to learn a lot about simple things at the very start just by watching and observing. I got to learn how to prime a pump or what a Jandy valve is, how I kind of tease. It's just things that even sometimes on the design side, I see people don't get the experience to be able to be in the field for even a short amount of time. I did that for that ended up resulting in me becoming an employee and then being a hybrid character of like startup / go for work, go to this job, go to that job. And it helped me learn essentially the other side of the industry before going into design, which was a really good experience. So it's a very non-traditional path, but I think that's becoming more and more common from what I hear. If you weren't born into the industry, you fall into it. And I don't know any other, I know other good examples of falling into it, but I like mine where I just literally was a driver for a company for 2 weeks. And that's what sparked me loving the industry.
How long did it take you between when you first started working to when you really developed those design shops that you have now?
Yeah, I've been in the industry almost 9 years now. And I would tell you what I think the answer is, what the question was, is really just I worked for that company for 8 months doing that kind of hybrid role before going into sales. And the reason I went into the sales role is the company I was working at, they had a lot of opportunity to hire two people. They basically hired a salesperson looking for someone to come in, and there was not a good fit in those two people. They had experience in the pool industry, but they weren't necessarily a good fit for what the company was looking for.
Right.
So they took a little bit of a different approach, saying, I'm going to hire someone that has a background in working the software or design concepts, but hasn't worked in the pool space. And so I thought that was my intention, was to pay my dues and work my way up, which I did, but maybe in a much shorter time. I did that for almost a year before I got the opportunity to start learning design in the backyard space. I thought it would have taken me maybe 5 years to start working as a designer. It took me less than a year. With that company, the opportunity I got, it was great. But from that point on, I just started learning from as many people as I could in our industry. There's so many great designers in the DFW area. So even just following and asking questions, learning at the shows, I've been involved in all the PHTA shows for every year ever since I've been in the industry. So those kind of continued education classes, working my way to having my CBP. Now that I'm at Claffey Pools, that was a really good opportunity to take that and run with it. I'm really just trying to continue to learn the way we're building, how things are progressing. So as a designer, I can implement the right way to design something by continued education.
Thank you, Moses, for that bit of bio information. And yeah, you're with Claffey Pools, one of the rock stars in the industry. So you're definitely a good company there. But every year, the event organizers try to present designers not only with a scenario that tests their design acumen, but also their problem solving abilities. In this year's $1,000,000 Pool Challenge, what were some of the unique challenges that you saw with the property?
Yeah, I think the property itself, come to find out, was a real property. It was really neat to get the information that the challenge sends over, but quickly learn that there is an actual address tied to it. So going into Zillow, going into the typical things we use as people who go out and put together design concepts, I was able to see the space, what they had originally. I didn't get to see the finished pool project, but it was something that was an actual project that another designer had worked on. But the challenges really were opportunities. There was a lot of elevation in this yard. There was a lot of land to work with. And I think so much so that the competition put a invisible line of do not pass these areas. And that was even a fun thing to press up against those boundaries and make sure I used every area I could as smart as I could, but also took advantage of the space that I was allowed to work in. So I'd say the elevations were what some people might see as a challenge. I think most of the designers that worked on the project saw it as a really cool opportunity because there were more drastic elevation changes than you usually see in a backyard.
There's so much going on in that design. You really need to watch the walkthrough video a couple of times to get everything that's in there. What inspired some of the design choices you made so far as the placement of features and amenities, though?
Let me touch on one thing too. I'll tell you, you just said something that sparks, like, it deserves a response. The biggest challenge I would say in the entire competition was making a 2-minute video to show what was done. So it is something that I think that the funniest part of saying that is that it really was like almost disturbing to say, oh, I'm only allowed 2 minutes to send this over. That's tough. Like, how do I even show what I've done? But yes, the fly through video shows a lot of what I felt like gave clear paths. Once I defined, I had to create a very view focused environment because this property has so much elevation change. It's just overlooking so many natural trees, just the natural environment. There was such a really beautiful view. So once I defined where I was going to focus on those views, I really do feel like it allowed for a clear path of what I was going to do to accent the views. I think the design choices after that were a little bit more of how to connect areas together in a way that felt like that extension of the home that I do believe most clients are looking for. But in this made up scenario, the two homeowners, I think that was the biggest thing I heard in what they were looking for was that retreat, that extension of the home, that really complete feel of the backyard space.
I had the opportunity to check out the walkthrough a couple of times, like I said, and it's spectacular. I'd love it if you could walk us through the design you submitted for this year's competition.
Yeah, I think the front yard was something that really it's where I'd start. It's where I started in the video. I did a way of editing together the before and after. It wasn't an actual image, but it was a rendering that we were provided. And so in that rendering space, I showed the house that all the designers got to see before, and then cut to what I did as my solution for the space. So the first thing I show is the entryway, which it's hard to see in the video fly through, but know that there's this big kind of column emphasis. Like I did these large columns to allow for the cars to drive under when entering into the property. And those columns also acted off of the entryway as the connection to, I basically did another column to be able to do a zip line across, because one of their requests in the scenario was a zip line. So where you put the zip line, I think a lot of people were going to focus on putting a zip line into the water. I wasn't trying to go counter what I felt like people might show, but I wanted to give the clients in this scenario an opportunity to see something that felt more like using the elevation in the land. So if you followed where I start the zip line, the yard actually raised. So when you come into the entryway, you would go off to the right and see the land, the elevations in the yard go up. So creating this mirrored entryway that went into more landscape and more destination seating area in the front yard. There was also a way for the zip line to work out in a way that I felt like the homeowners would watch their grandkids do a zip line, and it was all very safe and made sense in the yard. That's to the right when you first walk in. When you go to the left, there was a request for more parking spaces, and the parking space to me just again made sense to just keep a very clean area, but give some water features around the parking space. And so the first thing I think that you can see when walking into the property, they requested a balance of natural and modern. And I think that is where I really got to start showing that blend, because the water features in the front entryway were these really large boulder effects that had these really clean, modern scuppers that would come out and spill into the pool that was there. So that's just the front entryway. Walking into the backyard on both sides of the home, there's a lot of thought put into, I'd say, the pathways, the drainage, even. I think storage, equipment locations, all of that in the design. I really had a lot of fun putting thought into. However, again, in a 2-minute video, I don't really think you got to show too much of that thought. Leading to both sides of the house, getting to the backyard, again, with the elevation change, there's an upper level. The upper level was more the peaceful retreat. The lower level was more the action. So I took that narrative and made more the outdoor living, the more calm extension of the home up top. The request that one of the homeowners had was to have more of a spa feel, because they travel and see a lot of spas. I made that upper level inspired by their favorite spa that they've ever visited. And then the lower level served more the other homeowners' request of giving a lot more play, lots of splashing, swim, rope swings, all that kind of stuff. I think tying all those in together while still focusing on the views. The views in the design video, you can see the views were just breathtaking. And I know that if that project actually built, it would be just such a retreat at the end of the day of just watching the sunset. It was the inspiration or focus for me. Once I decided those views, again, it just drove a lot of what I was going to do.
Yeah, the views was definitely something that you captured really great. How spectacular those sweeping views are from both the top and the bottom elevation. And that was something that my wife, Marianne, actually noticed when we were watching your design. I was asking her, "Hey, what really spoke to you about Moses's design when you watch this video? What are the three things that just jumped out immediately to you?" And the views was definitely one of them. She also loved that acrylic fire feature that you had above the entertainment area as well. She thought that was really well thought out.
Yeah, the acrylic too. Even I know acrylic has become such a really high requested item, and I'm a fan of it, Joe. But I think it's also something where when you do it the same way we've seen, it was really for me on this type of design challenge. It was fun to just do something that was definitely an acrylic statement, but it wasn't in the water. It was something that really did serve that function of giving you an open feel, but safety. It's like we had an opportunity to do this see-through wall, but it was really understated. It was something that made a large statement, but it was a little bit more of there was a purpose, and that purpose gave you so much open feel, open view, and having it in two sections. I don't know if you noticed in the video, but I did one by the fire pit seating area that's very much for the water. People sitting in the water, sitting in the fire feature, that's there. But in the story, I'd also said that I made a little bit more intimate area that still had that acrylic. So there's two acrylic areas, but on that upper level, underneath the covered space, I did one that was just for two. And I was saying that at the end of the day, the homeowners, that's where they would retreat. That's where they would end their day. And since it's just two of them, it was just this perfect intimate space to be able to enjoy that view through an acrylic panel as well.
See, that's something I missed like the first few times around, but I love that about this design is all these different quadrants and they're all congruent with the rest of the pool design. So from the rock climbing wall to the zip line area to the putting green down to all these little alcoves and seating areas and conversation zones that you created, it feels like there's just a ton of things to do in this backyard, but it all gels together really handsomely.
Thank you. Yeah, that's definitely the thought I felt I was able to achieve putting into this is just how to marry everything together and make it feel like all one, even though there was no way it could be. You know, the elevations wouldn't allow it. The request for all the features wouldn't allow it, but it does have to me a very good flow of traffic that I was really proud of.
I love the upstairs elevation. I think that open concept of the living room tying directly into the outdoor living environment works really well with this project. And it's a design trend that I'm really glad that you took advantage of with this year's submission.
Cool. Yeah, I'm glad. What do you think about it? How it isn't up against the water? You like it?
I love a little, yeah, I love a little separation. That's great. But what you did with the top level is really create a kind of a Zen environment where yes, the downstairs is definitely party time for sure, but the upstairs is where I would want to hang out.
I'm glad to hear that. I also think going into it, I felt like seeing the space that a large amount of people would create a upper pool that spills into a bottom pool. And that was something I knew intentionally. I just wanted to find a different way of doing it because in my mind, the idea of separating the real life scenario of meeting with clients, there's a good way. I feel like there's a good way of showing you're listening, but also separating yourself. So I knew that in this way, I was going to have a lot of other people showing a design concept for the space. And not that it's a miss or a bad thing if you put water spilling from the top to the bottom, but I just felt like with this space, it would be such a cool way to just separate of just making them two completely bodies of water and not having the spill over. I'd say my favorite feature is that area we're talking about has that fire hanging right outside of that acrylic, but the under the fire, I did this intentional, let's call it a cover, to be able to do more of a projection screen underneath. So the lower level gets to enjoy this movie screen size projection underneath this area. The wall was big enough to really just call for something massive. And so that's probably the next level that I think, that was my favorite part, was being able to extend that and have a functional reason for why the fire is there, But then also it's visual, it's cool, but it's also like covering even like a projector or projection screen that the lower level gets to enjoy.
Yeah, it's a great space and it's multi-purpose now too. I love the fire features great for the upstairs portion. All right, but if you're just watching TV, watching a movie from downstairs below, you get this great dramatic fire effect going on right above the movie screen. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
There were a lot of submissions this year. You got the opportunity to check out some of the designs submitted by your competitors. What did you think of the designs that they submitted? You spent so much time considering how your interpretation of the project was going to look like. What's it like to view that space through somebody else's lens?
It was great. It was one of my favorite parts of the challenge for sure. I would tell you there were even people after the top five were announced that were starting to share what they didn't make the top five, and so even seeing people outside of the top five was really exciting to understand what people did to use the space. And I think the top five were great. Just being able to see how people resolve issues in a space is such a cool lesson to see how you did, to know like what your eye sees and what others see. I think all the designs were awesome. There were a few that even as they were coming together, I was a fan of. I thought they executed certain elements better than what I had done. But I think collectively, as watching even seeing in the presentation each person's design, mine I believe was last, and so to me, even seeing each one lead up to mine, it almost gave me a little bit more sense of things that I felt didn't necessarily cover one. Like one example is one element blocked some of those views, and I loved the design, but the blocking views to me was something I was really confident in making sure I didn't do. And so I think certain elements like that even add up to what makes the design. It's not just who has the best design, but who was able to capture all of those wants in one design.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I don't envy their job, Moses. There's so many people that submit designs to this competition. I have friends that submitted and they didn't get into the finals. But I tell them all it's not a popularity contest, it's a skills contest. The $1 million pool challenge is a great way to test your ability to design within a real strict set of parameters. And
yeah.
how does that competition emulate some of the real world challenges you kind of face when you're designing for a customer with a crazy budget like that?
Yeah, I think it does absolutely go hand in hand. I think that my experience of actual working with homeowners does help, because I know some people who are just more the design work, they have great ways to show concepts and ideas. But I think that picking the brain of a homeowner, even if it's a made up homeowner, I think picking the brain of a homeowner, knowing what direction, what judgment calls to make in the design process, it definitely goes hand in hand. The idea of doing a contest like this is a really good exercise to be able to make sure you're able to listen to a real life homeowner. And I think they go hand in hand for sure.
Other than the $10,000 grand prize, courtesy of Fire by Design, comes the recognition from your peers and the accolade of winner of the $1 million pool challenge. Now, for you, that's got to be personally fulfilling to know that others appreciate and recognize you as one of the leaders in this field. But talk to me about that journey, though, Moses. This is a great milestone, but where do you want to head with your professional career? Where do you see that kind of roadmap taking you in the years to come?
Yeah, I think that it's important to say I'm a big fan of this challenge. The two that have put together this just really to help cultivate, I think, community in the industry. It's a really cool opportunity. I've been a fan of it for a long time, and this was my second time to submit a design. And I think to me, it's one of the biggest honors that I've set a goal to be able to place in the top five of this. That was really my goal, was just to be in the top five of this design competition. But to be able to get to the top five and then start thinking about the possibility of, like you're saying, have that honor of winning first place, I really have seen already, and hope to see more opportunity to meet more people in the industry. I've seen even a reach out of getting to know people who have a lot of experience and a lot of connection in our industry, introducing themselves to me because of this challenge. So I think the answer or the response to being able to take a win like this and do something with it, I'm really just looking forward to cultivating the relationships I've made from it and continuing to make more relationships from it, because there's so many people in our industry that have a lot of great experience that I don't know yet. And I feel like I'm a pretty outgoing person, so I've gotten to meet a lot of folks, but there's so many others that I just look forward to meeting in the years to come. And I think this competition gave me the opportunity to meet some of them already, and I look forward to the ones I haven't met yet.
Some of the judges were Eric Herman over at Watershape, Rebecca Robledo from PSN. You had Jason Brownlee. He's been on the cover of Pool Magazine. A lot of these people that are looking at your design, they look at luxury pools all day long. All right. So for them to single out your design and recognize you as the winner of this competition is quite an achievement in itself. Why do
Yeah.
you think the $1 million pool challenge is such a great competition for design professionals to participate in? And how do you feel like it elevates our industry?
Yeah, it elevates our industry because I think that there's a shift in my time being in the industry where people are starting to become less like, everyone wants to do more, but I think there's a little less of this, I don't know, division. So people are starting to become more open to talking to others and getting to know others, at least in my time in the industry. And I joke, but there was a time where people were too afraid to tell you where they got a tile, water line tile. They didn't want, like, when I first got in, it was like everybody was very quiet about things. And now it's becoming a lot more open source. People are not afraid to share ideas or show ideas. Even I've heard of people who don't even post online things because they don't want someone else to take their idea. Now there's just so much that people can find online that it's not like that anymore. I think that this kind of competition just opens the playbook for everyone to see what the scenario is, and then allow for, like you're saying, people who deal in luxury spaces already get to see other people's concepts or up and coming people's concepts, and almost encourage new ideas and new thought for the next generation or people who are still sharpening their craft. One name you didn't get to mention, but even Danny Wang was one of the judges, and he's like
I'm
up.
sorry, I missed Danny. Yeah.
Yeah, Danny Wang is one of, not just saying, I mean, he's one of my favorite creative thinkers in the design world, for pools. And man, he just, to have him even reach out, introduce himself, say congratulations, I was one of the judges. I'll tell you, that is probably a goal I had set in my mind anyways. I met him once at one of the international shows just in passing, but to get the opportunity, even like you said, to have these amazing designers who know what goes into this kind of concept, it's back to where I'm saying people are just starting to encourage growth in our industry by even just reaching out and shaking each other's hands. So as a younger person in the industry, I really love that concept of us being more collaborative. And it doesn't. There's just so much work and so much opportunity. I think that it elevates our industry when we tend to be with the right folks, like encouraging and say, do it the right way, and put the right thought into the project, and it helps the whole industry altogether.
Absolutely. Well, next year you're going to be invited back as one of the judges. You looking forward to flipping the script and getting to analyze and critique the work of your peers? What are you going to be looking for so far as a judge in the submissions that you evaluate?
Yeah. So Brad Hawley was the winner last year, the year before. So he got to be the judge. And he actually said one of my favorite things, one of the most encouraging things at the show this year. When he was giving a breakdown of my design, I won by using Pool Studio. And the industry is changing where there's so many powerful softwares. I haven't seen someone win with Pool Studio in the last few years. So to me, even him turning to me during the presentation and saying something so encouraging about using Pool Studio, creating details that I did. He knows Pool Studio, he knows the other softwares, and it was so cool to be encouraging. For him to be that encouraging, it's really something that stood out, touching on just the level of detail I was able to do with some of the inside features. I did a lot of detail in the house that I think he knew had to take a lot of thought or comfort with the software. So to answer your question, I look forward to trying to find something that's as encouraging as what Brad had shared with me during the, I guess, presentation, because it's really cool to be able to give feedback to others And in that scenario, you're invited to give feedback. It'll be cool to share what I like about something or what maybe could have been different. And hopefully it's a positive thing like it was for me this year to hear that feedback from the judges.
Yeah, I've seen the last couple years submissions too. Everything's moving to Lumion and 3D Studio Max and Revit and all these other programs are experimenting with. But it sounds like you don't need to see something necessarily in one of the latest and greatest software platforms. You're just looking for that kind of attention to detail and whether or not they've fulfilled all the wish list items of the homeowner and whether or not their design really truly meets all of the parameters there.
Yeah, I think it's that. And I'll tell you too, I've seen some of those, all the softwares you just named are amazing. They're so powerful, but sometimes people use those and they're just still not the right design. So to me, there is a part of using the right tool. So for me, it was Pool Studio and using the right tool and then just knowing how to manipulate the software to make it what I needed it to be, to tell the story, to express what I was looking to do, to be able to do it in Pool Studio. Even that, Joe, was like a little bit of a goal of mine because that's what I'm comfortable in is Pool Studio. And I've really gotten to a level where I'm super comfortable in it. To be able to go up against others that use maybe newer tools, I was really proud to be able to not only place, but to place first with Pool Studio design. It was really cool.
Really great discussion. I really enjoyed learning more about your thought process with this design and getting to know you a little bit better, Moses. Thanks for taking the time out to be on the show today.
Joe, thank you. It was an honor. I listened to the podcast and then preparing for this, listened to even more episodes I hadn't heard yet. And it's great what you guys are doing. So thank you for what you do.
That's all the time that we have left for today. Make sure to like, share, follow, and subscribe. And we'll catch you next time on another episode of Pool Magazine Podcast.
Today's episode of Pool Magazine Podcast is proudly sponsored by the PSP Deck Expo. The International Pool Spa Patio Expo, co-located with Deck Expo, is where all segments of the industry gather to stay well-informed of the latest trends, market directions, and technology. Come for the 135,000 plus square feet of products, suppliers, and education. And stay longer for networking, special events, and experiences. This year's Expo in Las Vegas will be held from October 22nd through October 24th. To learn more about attending the PSP Deck Expo, visit us on the web at poolspapatio.com.